Have you heard about special student interviews in the World Language Classroom? Maybe you've tried them yourself. In today's episode, I speak with Bryce Hedstrom, who's a Spanish and Latin teacher in Colorado. He also does quite a bit of professional development with language teachers. Bryce walks us through the benefits of special student interviews, along with actionable suggestions for doing them in your classroom. Whether special student interviews are new to you, or if you're looking for some ways to enhance how you're already using them, you will walk away from this episode quite inspired. So let's jump in. Are you a language teacher looking for some reassurance that what you're doing in the classroom is on the right track? Or maybe you're looking for some ways to teach even more effectively. If you're one or the other or somewhere in between, you've landed in the right place. This is the World Language Classroom Podcast with your host, me, Joshua Cabral. You're about to get tips, tools, and resources so that your students continue to rise in proficiency and communicate with confidence. Let's jump in. Vamos, allons-y. Hello, my friends. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, mis amigos. Welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast. I am Joshua Cabral, and thank you so much for being here. I know, hopefully you're not getting sick of hearing me say that at the beginning of every episode. You're an awesome teacher because you're listening to a podcast about language teaching, but I can't say it enough. That is what you're doing. You could be listening to any kind of podcast right now, and you're listening to a podcast that's going to help you to be introspective about your teaching, to think that you're really reassured you're doing some great stuff and you want to keep doing it that way or thinking about it in a different way. But that is making you an incredible educator. So thank you so much for doing that. So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about special person interviews. Now, this is likely something you've heard about or you've seen in social media. Personally, for me, I have heard a lot about it. People tell me about it all the time, and I have not actually done it myself. So I reached out to Bryce Hedstrom to ask him to give us some details and insights and recommendations for how to do it. Because if you want to go to someone to get some insights and recommendations, this is the person you want to go to. So Bryce Hedstrom is a career Spanish teacher, although he has picked up Latin in the more recent years. And he's been teaching all levels, elementary, middle, high school, college for 37 years. And he is in Colorado. And he is a name that you often see and hear because he's doing so much great work out there for language teachers and collaborations. He has some books on reading strategies and making connections with students. He's also written some CI novels that you can also use in your classroom. And his PD, yes, it's a lot focused on world language teachers, but he works with all disciplines. And I am most happy to say that he is the past president of his state language association. And you know that I take every opportunity on this podcast to shout off the rooftops how much we love our state language association. So he is a past president of his Colorado association as well. So, Bryce, I'm going to bring you into the conversation now that we've talked a bit about you, and welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast.
No, thanks for having me here, Joshua. I'm thrilled to be here, like talking to you in person. This is great.
So I mentioned a little piece in there about having been a career Spanish teacher, but you've recently dabbled in Latin later on in your career. So what has that experience been like for you?
It has been one of the best experiences in my whole teaching career. My daughter wanted to start classical school. Someone said, well, are you going to teach Latin? And my daughter, that quick, said, my dad could teach Latin, but I didn't speak Latin. So I said, yeah, I could teach Latin. And so I've acquired Latin by listening and reading, mainly reading. And I've taught it for 2 years now. I taught Latin 1 and Latin 2 last year. This year, I'm teaching Latin 1, Latin 2, and Latin 3 as a volunteer at my daughter's school. So yeah, I'm having a ball teaching Latin. I never would have thought I could learn another language and culture also. So special person interviews. It's a name that someone suggested for this like 17, 18 years ago at a workshop I was doing in Minneapolis. I didn't have a name for it. And I just said, okay, I've always hoped to come up with a better name, but people keep using it. What it is you interview students one at a time in your classroom and just get to know them. It's all in the target language. And that's nothing new.
And when you say interviewing students one at a time, is this done publicly? Or are you talking about doing this one-on-one with students?
It's in the classroom publicly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talk to each one as we go around the class, and then we come back because we know more. We have more language, and students are more confident. So it's public.
And how does this approach or technique respond to a comprehensible input approach to language teaching? How does it play into that?
It has to be comprehensible, so that the student and the classmates all understand. And so I ask certain questions, and I have those questions posted on the wall, but we want to ask more questions beyond that. The trick is only adding like 3 to 5 new words per. That's what makes it comprehensible. And I stop, I write. If the kid doesn't know, they can speak in English. I'll write it in Spanish or Latin and then write it in English on the board. You have to make yourself only do 3 to 5 new words, but it starts adding up after a while.
And as you're doing these individual interviews, are you doing specific topics by student, or are you staying on one sort of general topic that everyone is responding to?
I start off with real predictable things like, what's your name? Do you have a nickname things like, how old are you? What grade are you in? Where are you from originally? I have a general structure, like it breaks off real fast into other topics because you don't just only ask those questions.
So you're doing this more than once, because I'm thinking of this in terms of what's your name, how old are you, where do you live, like those sorts of questions. So as you repeat this activity and you're asking individual questions beyond that, are you starting with those same questions and then moving into other ones, or what does that sort of trajectory look like?
Yeah, I always start off, even if I know their name, I say in the target language, "Hi, my name is Mr. Hedstrom. What is your?" And just to get that back and forth. And then I will go down a list of questions, but the trick is to ask a follow-up question. Insert that. I got to say this many times. Asking follow-up questions is the secret. And so you can even ask follow-up questions when it's their own name. Can I give you an anecdote about this?
Absolutely.
Okay. I will do model teaching whenever I have a workshop or something planned. If I know a teacher in the area, I'll come a day early and go in their classroom, teach a lesson. I was doing this for a classroom here in Colorado a few years ago. I asked the girl, "What's your name?" She says, "Ash." And I said, "Ashley." And I said, "Oh, that's a pretty name." And I turned to the class and I say in Spanish, and this is another thing to get to. I turn to the class and I say, "Class, this girl's name is Ashley." And she goes, "Not really." I'm like, "What? You just said," and this is all in the target language. It's so predictable, everyone can understand. I said, you just said your name is Ashley. Your name is not Ashley? And she goes, "No." And I'm like, at that point, this is handing a follow-up question on a golden platter to you. It's not just, I would never ask, "Oh, Ashley, do you have a dog?" It's like, of course you're going to ask a follow-up question. And so I said, "Okay, what is your name?" And she goes, "Ashley." I'm like, "It's the same name." She goes, "No." And so we go through the whole thing. How do you spell it? And it turns out she's been ashamed her whole life because her mother misspelled her on her birth certificate. And I said, "Why? So she goes, "My mom doesn't speak English." This is all in target language, like in level Spanish 1, second or third week. Like, "Your mom doesn't speak English?" "Oh my, what does your mom speak?" And she goes, "Chinese." She goes, "How do you say Chinese?" I go, "Oh, Chino." "Oh my goodness." And so I write on the board, "Your mom speaks Chinese. Do you speak Chinese? Does everyone in your family speak Chinese?" This is so great. Class, Ashley speaks Chinese. We just followed up on that idea with about 14 level 1 type sentences with this. That was a fabulous interview with one question.
Yeah, so I was thinking these are the questions that I often get from teachers. These are great ideas, but there's always the what abouts. And so one of my questions was going to be, as you're doing these, what about the other students? What are they doing? But your anecdote showed me that they are actually engaged along with it. For a level 1 class, how long would you be spending on one particular student with their questions?
Great question. I spend between 15 seconds and 45 minutes, depending how the mojo is, the interest, the energy lasts. If a kid does not want to talk, we don't talk. We'll say, we'll come back to you. No big deal. All right? And we'll come back later. But if the mojo lasts, it goes like 45 minutes. But I budget in my lesson plan 10 minutes.
A lot of times when we do CI work, anything sort of comprehensible input in our classrooms, it tends to stay that kind of level 1. And these questions you're asking, you're saying it's a couple of weeks into the school year, they're new to the language. But how does this approach work with higher level, with a higher proficiency level class that are maybe intermediate? So it's not just the what's your name types of questions, but what can that look like at a higher proficiency level?
Oh, very good question. And people ask that all the time. So on my website, if it's not too early to mention this, website is brycehedstrom.com, free stuff. There's a pull down that has special person. One of the very first links on that special person is a transcript of a intermediate level interviewing kids. The secret with intermediate is follow up. Ask follow up questions. Keep asking. With them, you can go faster and deeper than with other level 1 or level 2. And you just keep asking. This one particular girl, and I said, where are you from? I knew she was from Mexico. She didn't want to talk about that. Said, you play softball. She didn't want to talk about that. So she just gave 2 or 3 wholesome answers. But when I asked her, you like to read, don't you? She just, yes, like, this is how you tell which ones to follow. The kids will broadcast it to you. Their eyes, if you're standing close enough, their eyes will dilate, or they will lean in, or they'll become more animated. And you're just like, ding, 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 ding. Ask follow-up questions. I asked 24 follow-up questions about, do you like to read? But just based on her answers, we just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. What do you read? What's your budget? Do your parents help you with this? Do you share your books? What are your favorite authors? Just on and on and on. Because she loved to read because she was dyslexic. And this is what helped her to become a superstar student reading. So you find the kid's passion.
I'm seeing a connection here with possibly using a card talk, where they have the little table tent on their desk where it has pictures of things that they like to do or their family, not necessarily words, depending on the proficiency level. And upon seeing those, you could see, oh, this student has a picture of a baseball. This student has a picture of a movie camera. This person has a picture of a country or a type of food. And you can then ask the questions based on that, because it's really their particular interests. And I've used those with students that are a lower proficiency level because it's more pictures rather than words, although you could do it with words there.
And I like to use the words. So even I've done this like the first day. I asked them, what's your name? Do you want Joshua or do you want another? I just asked them that, and that's day 1 interview. The kid and their nickname, he wants to be called T-Gray or something. It just goes from there as you slowly build up.
And so now I have some questions about logistics, because when people want to do this, and
sure,
what does it actually look like in the classroom?
Right.
And so you had talked about how much time you set aside for doing it and how much time you spend on each student. But are you going through in a particular order? So like a student knows they're next. Oh, I'm 3 people away. And, because there's anxiety and affective filter stuff that can come up in that. Or are you having students volunteer? Is the expectation that every student is going to participate in this? So talk us through the logistics of what that 10 or 15 minutes looks like with individual students.
I've done both. I've done volunteers, but that doesn't work because the volunteers are the real confident, popular kids. And so you would think that, just by on the volunteers, everyone is superstar athlete, does all the popular activities, and it just makes it dead for the kids that aren't in those categories. And so that I quit ever doing that again. the expectation is everyone's going to be interviewed. They want to, and they always do, because the trick is coming up. But I just go around the room so I can keep track of it. We got 30 students, so I just know I'm about in this section of the room as we go around. But kids can pass. They may be shy. They may have reason not to trust some of their classmates or adults. And I let them pass. I say, we'll come back to you. No big deal. And just go on to another kid. And so that to me, that is just the best way to do it, because you include everybody. And you'll get a kid that wants to talk. He doesn't do anything special, but then you start finding out things about him. The goal is to make every kid the most interesting person. I mean, my goal is to make them shine. I never say it out loud, but they just pick that up. Like, this teacher likes me and has my back and is going to make me look good. He's not going to make me stupid, even if I don't know the language, and even if I don't do anything special, even if I'm not the captain of the football team or something. So that's what works for me, is not to take volunteers and to just go around the room. So everyone kind of knows that the other trick is keep on going. Just keep on going around the room. Because the first 2 or 3 kids, we only know their name and their nickname. That's it. That's all we know about them. But as we learn more language, we're adding 3 to 5 words. After a couple months, they can talk about nearly anything in their normal school world.
Can I shift this a little bit in terms of the questions to put an SEL DEI lens on it? And these are personal questions. I mean, I'm saying personal questions, but you can ask a student something like, what's your favorite color? And there could be some ramifications to the answer to that question, that it's not the associated gender, color, expectation thing like that. So in terms of setting up your classroom space where you're asking these personal questions where students are feeling vulnerable and you've lowered that affective filter, can you talk to us a bit about how you've created that safe space in your classroom for students to engage in these personal questions? That's really good. I do tell them, we don't want to know everything about you. We don't want to know things other may not want us to know. That's what I tell. Because I've had kids blurt out, my brother's ill and so sad, or my parents are getting divorced. They just say anything. It's like, dude, we just want to know about what you want us to know. That's what I say to them. And that works for almost every kid in every situation. High school, junior high kids, they have a lot to talk about. And even upper elementary, you can ask them, do you have any animals? That's all. High school kids, what's your favorite car? The way that I get them to talk is, don't say anything your grandmother would be not want us to know about your family. The open-ended one is, what do you like to do? High school kids will say sleep. And I say, what else do you like to do? And the what else do you like to do gets the ball rolling. So I'm thinking about, but we're talking about it being very personal. And as I'm moving beyond into those intermediate levels, and say we're reading a book and there are multiple characters in it, and have you tried it where the student assumes the identity of one of the characters and tries to do the special person interview in that character?
Oh, I've never done that. I've allowed kids to assume another persona, but I say, okay, wait a minute, though. You can do that. That's fine. But you're going to be quizzed on this. And we all. And so if you're going to make up 50 outlandish, just made up details, you're going to have to remember them. Right? I mean, this is going to come back on you. If it's real stuff about you, no problem. Remember. So that would be fun. I've never done that. The one thing that I do to really get them talking at upper levels is like, what do you want to do in the future?
When have you found that this is most effective within a class period? To do it at the beginning? Is it something to hold to the end, the middle? Where has it been most effective for you?
I do it in the middle. That's just the way my schedule is rolled out. I do a warm-up activity first, and then 10 minutes of independent reading every class period. And then after that, 2 days a week, we'll do an interview. And then the other 2 days during that time reading, they will do a quiz, and that is write sentences that you heard them say.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question is once you've done them, no, it's fine. You're already, anticipating where we're going with it. And it's that follow-up. I would see this as an interpersonal activity, with the questions
Absolutely,
and the answers. Yeah. And so once students have engaged in this activity, you had talked about a quiz after. So what are some follow-up activities or even assessments that you have done successfully after?
There's constant checks for understanding and reinforcement of what we're doing. I will ask a question. What's your name? Oh, my name is Ashley. Class, this girl's name is, and I train them. Whenever I give a piece of information about a kid, they have to act like it's the most interesting thing. It really is a good way for them to respond. And then I verify with the interviewee. It's like, you know what? Let me get this straight. Your name is not Ashley. It's Ashley. On and on like that. And so I verify the information. I make mistakes a few times. The class can shout, oh, senor, and then I say, what do we know about Ashley? The students say, and then get with a partner, write down as many sentences as you can about Ashley, and then let's report out. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's a good one. And so they have multiple ways of remembering. The next day will be the quiz, and the quiz, they can't use their notes, and so that raises their level of concern. They've got to really pay attention.
I'm very excited to try this out on my own, in my own classroom. I'm sure that those teachers out there that are listening who are already doing some version of this in their classroom, they're getting some new ideas, some different ways to look at it. And is there anything else you want to specifically add in to keep in mind about these special person interviews?
Do follow-up questions. That's the most important. It's not important at all to go straight down the list of questions. I have special person interview posters in 14 different languages on my website. Don't go straight down the list. That's what I started off doing. Look for the lean in. Look for the sparkle in their eye. Follow up like crazy. The other piece of advice I would give is from the famous martial artist Bruce Lee. Mm-hmm. He said, I do not fear the opponent that has practiced 10,000 different kicks. I fear the opponent that's practiced one kick 10,000 times. And I think our kick as world language teachers could be asking good questions, simple, engaging questions that are pull students in. Practice doing that. Just practice. That's going to apply to all areas of your job. Mm-hmm. And just keep practicing that. We got to ask questions in such a way that it will pull students in and engage them. Let's do the Bruce Lee.
As we sort of wrap up here, I like to ask some recommendations that you might have for teachers, whether those are conferences, books, other folks to follow. What do you recommend for our teachers that are looking to dive a little deeper?
Well, first of all, is my website, brycehedstrom.com. Free stuff. I have a book that I wrote about this years ago. I'm rewriting it now. Be looking for that. Look for Sabrina Janczak. Janczak. She's a French teacher in Denver, but she also teaches at Colorado University in Boulder, which is our flagship public university. Mm-hmm. And she teaches her French 1 class completely with special person interviews. It's dumbfounding how fluent these kids are. Mm-hmm. That's all she does. Mm-hmm. I would look for videos of her doing that, especially if you don't speak much French. It would be great to do that because you can just see the fluency and the confidence of the kids. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that are doing this. Anne-Marie Chase, I know, has blogged about this. There's all kinds of people.
Well, you gave us your website, which is brycehedstrom.com. Are there some other ways we can be connecting with you on various social media or other ways?
I have a blog. I have a newsletter. I'm on Instagram. Just put in Bryce Hedstrom. And I'm also on Facebook. And now I have a Latin Instagram page also.
Thank you very much for all of this information about the special person interviews. And I always like to leave our listeners at the end with a hearty piece of advice. It can be about special person interviews or teaching in general or life. So what's some advice you can leave us with?
Make every student feel like they're the most interested person. Kids don't experience that. And it's wonderful. They just feel so validated, so noticed, so important. As an aside, I never had any behavior problems with a student because they're like, Senior Hedstrom loves me. Like he absolutely loves me. And he thinks I'm great, and he let everyone else know. And so that, to me, that's the most important.
So that goes back to my original question earlier on about the SEL and DEI and what students are comfortable with is you make them feel like that, and that's where you're going to get the engagement. Well, Bryce Hedstrom, thank you so much for your time and all of this experience with special person interviews that you shared with us today. Lots of great takeaways, and I know teachers are going to be trying this right away in their classrooms. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua.
What are your takeaways from that conversation with Bryce Hedstrom? I hope you're feeling inspired to try out a special person interview, or you got some new ideas if you're already using them in your classroom. Be sure to check out the show notes to connect with Bryce Hedstrom. You'll also see the link to sign up for Talking Points, my weekly email newsletter with tips and resources for language teaching. There are also links to get in touch with me if you'd like to work together, either in person in your school or remotely. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the World Language Classroom podcast. Be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. Let's keep the conversation going on social media. Connect with me on X, aka Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WL Classroom. And for even more valuable resources, visit my website, WLClassroom.com, where you'll find over 300 blog posts about language teaching. So stay inspired, keep growing, and continue making a difference in your language classroom.